I was 7 months pregnant when I found out my husband was also expecting a child with my best friend. And the worst part was that I discovered it at the hospital, the very place she was supposed to be there for me. It's funny how life can twist your biggest joys into your deepest wounds. How a moment that should have been filled with laughter and baby kicks turned into the day everything inside me broke. Hey guys, welcome to Darnell Stories. If you love deep, emotional tales about love, betrayal, and revenge, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to like this video so more people can find stories like this one. Now let's get into it. They say betrayal never comes from your enemies. It comes from the people who sit next to you, who laugh with you, who tell you they love you. For me, that betrayal wore two familiar faces: my husband, Shane, and my best friend, Rachel. Shane was 33, a nightclub security guard who picked up extra shifts as a Lyft driver just to make ends meet. He was tall, charming in a rough kind of way, the kind of man who made you feel safe, even when the world wasn't. And Rachel? Rachel was 26, bright, beautiful, and single. She worked as a concierge in a high-end hotel in downtown LA, and she had this smile that could light up any room. We'd been best friends since college, sisters in everything but blood. So when I found out I was pregnant, she was the first person I called. She cried with me, shopped with me, even held my hand during every appointment. She told me she wanted to be Auntie Rachel to my baby. What I didn't know was that she was already carrying my husband's. One day, she told me she was pregnant too. I remember hugging her, telling her how proud I was. I thought fate was being sweet, two best friends bringing life into the world at the same time. She said the father wasn't ready to take responsibility, that she didn't even want him involved. I promised to stand by her, to be her rock. But I didn't know. I was already standing on the fault line of my own destruction. That day at the hospital, I had no idea my whole life was about to split in two. I thought I was there to see my baby's heartbeat. Instead, I overheard the conversation that stopped my own. You ever have a moment where time stops, but your mind keeps racing? Where the people you love suddenly look like strangers? That was me. And I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just listened. What I heard that day burned itself into my soul. And from that moment on, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to survive their betrayal. I was going to make them regret it. So if you think you've heard every story about revenge and heartbreak, stay with me. Because this one hit closer than blood. When people talk about balance, they make it sound easy. But when you're a director at LAX, balance is a myth. My days started before sunrise and ended long after midnight. The only constant in my life was exhaustion. And Shane. He used to tease me about being married to my job. "You love those planes more than me," he'd joke. I'd laugh, kiss his cheek, and promise him a weekend getaway that never happened. I didn't realize that every missed dinner, every late night, was slowly pushing him into someone else's arms. Rachel filled the gaps I didn't even know were there. She'd stop by with takeout when she knew I was working late, send me reminders to hydrate, and text Shane to check if I'd gotten home safe. She said she was helping, and I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my best friend. The three of us had this rhythm, one that looked perfect from the outside. On weekends when I wasn't working, Rachel would come over, and we'd cook together while Shane sat on the couch watching sports. What could go wrong between two people I trusted the most? Then one morning, Rachel called me crying. She said she'd missed her period and didn't know what to do. Her voice shook, and I could tell she was terrified. I left work early and drove straight to her apartment. She was sitting on the couch, a pregnancy test on the coffee table. 2 pink lines. Positive. I hugged her, told her everything would be fine, and asked who the father was. She hesitated before saying, "He's not ready to be a dad. He doesn't even know yet." I didn't press her. I thought she was protecting herself. I told her she could stay with us for a while if she needed to. She declined, said she'd be okay. But from that day, I made it my mission to be there for her the way she'd always been there for me. We started going to our prenatal appointments together. We joked that our babies would grow up like siblings. Sometimes, she'd even rub my belly and talk to the baby, saying things like, "You better not bully my kid," I'd laugh and tell her I couldn't wait for our playdates. It never crossed my mind that she was rubbing her child's half-sibling. Shane, meanwhile, had been working more hours. He said the bills were piling up, and he wanted me to relax through my pregnancy. He'd pick up late-night Lyft rides or take extra shifts at the club. He was rarely home when I went to bed. I'd wake up to the smell of his cologne and hear the shower running. When I asked how his night went, he'd mumble busy and kiss my forehead. It didn't feel wrong, just distant. The kind of distance you convince yourself is temporary. The day of my second trimester ultrasound, Rachel insisted on coming with me. I wouldn't miss it for the world, she said, smiling like she meant it. Shane promised to join us after work. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a husband and best friend who loved me this much. At the hospital, the nurse told us the baby was healthy.
A boy.
I remember crying when I saw his little heartbeat fluttering on the screen. Shane arrived midway, kissed my forehead, called me Supermom. Rachel congratulated us, said she couldn't wait to be Auntie Rachel. It felt like family. I had no reason to doubt any of it. After the appointment, the nurse said she needed a few signatures. Shane excused himself to take a phone call in the hallway, and Rachel said she'd wait outside. I stayed behind to finish paperwork, humming softly to my son's rhythm on the screen. When I looked up, I saw Rachel's reflection in the glass. She was sitting in the waiting area, scrolling on her phone. A small part of me felt sorry for her. Pregnant, alone, dealing with a man who didn't want to step up. I wanted to help her, maybe even convince Shane to talk to the guy on her behalf, give him a man's perspective. If only I knew. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle shifts. Rachel's messages became shorter, less cheerful. When I offered to visit, she made excuses. Shane started avoiding questions about his night shifts, and sometimes when I mentioned Rachel, he'd get quiet. I thought it was guilt. Maybe he felt bad that her baby's father had disappeared. Then, one night, as I folded laundry, I found a crumpled hospital appointment slip in Shane's jeans pocket. The date matched one of the days Rachel said she had her checkup. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe he'd been giving her a ride, being supportive. After all, that was Shane. Helpful, dependable Shane. But something inside me started to twist. A few days later, I noticed Rachel acting strange again. She was in my kitchen, cutting fruit, when she suddenly blurted, "Do you ever feel like fate punishes good people?" I turned to her, confused, but before I could ask, she said, "Never mind," and quickly changed the subject. That night, I replayed her words in my head over and over. Fate punishes good people. What did she mean? I told myself I was being paranoid, that pregnancy hormones were making me overthink everything. I convinced myself my best friend couldn't betray me and my husband wouldn't dare. But deep down, something had already shifted. Because the next morning, when I looked at both of them, Rachel's tired smile, Shane's distracted eyes, something in my gut whispered that I was standing between two liars pretending to care. And even though I didn't have proof yet, I could feel the truth inching closer. I just didn't know it would reveal itself in the cruelest way possible. The day started like any other. Shane was supposed to pick me up after his morning shift. Rachel called early, asking if she could tag along. I said of course. It had become our thing. Two pregnant women navigating motherhood together. She showed up wearing a loose beige dress, hair tied back, and that same gentle smile she always wore. I noticed her hands tremble slightly as she handed me a bottle of water. I thought it was just nerves. I didn't realize it was guilt. At the hospital, everything felt familiar. The scent of antiseptic. The soft hum of machines. I lay there watching the monitor, my son's heartbeat echoing through the room. I remember Rachel reaching out, brushing a tear off my cheek. "You're going to be such a good mom," she whispered. I smiled at her, touched her hand, and said, "So will you." That was the last moment I saw her as my friend. When the scan ended, Shane joined us. He was out of breath, still in his black security uniform. He kissed my forehead and cracked a tired smile. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare." We laughed about baby names for a bit. The nurse printed the ultrasound photo and handed it to me. Everything felt calm, almost peaceful, until Shane's phone buzzed. He frowned, muttered something about needing to take a call, and stepped outside. Rachel followed a few minutes later, saying she wanted to grab something from the vending machine. I didn't think much of it. I was still floating on the high of seeing my baby. I sat in the waiting area, scrolling through pregnancy blogs, one hand resting on my stomach. Then came the craving, something sweet, something cold. I decided to walk down to the cafeteria. That's when I saw them. At the end of the corridor, near the emergency exit, Shane and Rachel stood facing each other. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that the air between them felt charged, heavy. I froze. But in confusion. What could they be talking about so deeply? I was about to call out, but something in her posture stopped me. Her head was bowed, and Shane was speaking to her in that low voice he used only when something was serious. I stepped back, hiding behind the corner. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. But then I heard my name. "Jada can't find out," Rachel whispered. My heart stuttered. Shane's reply came sharp, controlled. "Keep your voice down. I'm doing everything I can to fix this, okay?" Rachel's voice cracked. "There's no fixing it, Shane. I'm pregnant. You think she won't notice when our babies are weeks apart?" My mind went blank. Every word hit me like a bullet. She kept talking, voice shaking. "You said you'd tell her after the baby shower. You said she deserved to know from you, not from anyone else." I felt my breath catch in my throat. The corridor spun. Shane said, "I know what I said, but she's not in a good place right now. The stress isn't good for her or the baby." Rachel laughed bitterly. "So, what am I supposed to do? Carry this lie forever? You think it's easy watching her glow about her perfect marriage while I'm hiding your child?" Something inside me broke. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself, but the floor felt like it was tilting. My baby kicked, a sharp reminder that I wasn't dreaming. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burst through that hallway and slap the both of them. But my body wouldn't move. My throat felt like it was filled with glass. Instead, I just stood there, trembling, listening to the sound of my husband comforting my best friend about the baby they made together. "I'll take care of you," he told her. "You know I will." The words echoed in my head like poison. I turned away before they saw me. My feet felt like they were made of lead. Every step back to the waiting room hurt. It was as if each one tore another piece out of me. When Shane returned, I was sitting exactly where he'd left me. Ultrasound photos still in my hand. He smiled, kissed my forehead again, and asked if I was ready to go. I nodded. I didn't say a word on the drive home. He played music like nothing had happened. I stared out the window, counting the seconds until we reached the house. Inside, I went straight to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection. My eyes looked foreign, hollow. I slid down to the floor, clutching my belly. I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears wouldn't come. Only silence. Because I wasn't just mourning my marriage. I was mourning the friendship that once felt unbreakable. The next few days blurred together. I went to work. I smiled. I even texted Rachel like nothing had changed. I wanted time to think, to breathe, to decide how to move in a world that suddenly felt fake. Every time Shane touched me, I flinched. Every time Rachel called, I stared at her name on my phone, wondering how someone who knew every detail of my life could lie so effortlessly. At night, I lay awake replaying that conversation. "Jada can't find out. You think it's easy watching her glow?" Those words branded themselves in my mind. The pain wasn't loud, it was quiet, surgical, methodical, like something carving me open from the inside out. And beneath that pain, something else began to grow, something darker. It wasn't hate, not yet. It was resolve. Because in that silence, I realized something. They had taken my peace, my trust, my joy, but they hadn't taken my control. If betrayal was their sin, then patience would be my weapon. They thought they were protecting me from the truth. They had no idea what I was capable of once I knew it. And as I lay there that night, staring at the ceiling with my unborn child moving gently inside me, I made myself a quiet promise. I wouldn't confront them yet. I'd let them think I was blind. I'd smile, laugh, and let them dig their own graves. Because revenge doesn't need rage. Sometimes, it just needs time. And I had plenty of that. For the next few weeks, I played the perfect wife. I still cooked his meals, sent him little texts during work, smiled when he walked through the door. If he noticed that my hugs lasted a little too long, that I was studying his face every time he lied, he didn't say a word. Because guilt blinds even the clever ones. Every night, I waited for him to fall asleep before slipping out of bed. I'd sit in the living room with a cup of mint tea, phone in hand, scrolling through Rachel's messages. She still texted like everything was fine. Baby memes, nursery ideas, even how's my godson doing? Jokes. My hands would shake, but my replies stayed calm. I let her think she still had me. That was step one. Step two came one afternoon, when Shane left his laptop open on the couch. He was in the shower, singing along to some old R&B track. His phone had been unusually silent that week, too silent. So I checked his emails. That's when I saw it. A receipt from a private maternity clinic, under Rachel's name. Payment came from his account. It was dated 2 days after my own ultrasound. I just stared at the screen, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out the sound of the running water. I took a photo of the receipt with my phone. Evidence. Then I closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and smiled as he came out, towel slung over his shoulder. He kissed my forehead. You okay, babe? Yeah, I said softly. Just thinking about baby names again. That night, while he slept, I began a list on my notes app. Every entry had a date, time, and detail. I wasn't collecting proof for confrontation. Not yet. I was collecting it for justice. But here's the thing about pretending, you start to lose track of which parts are real. Some nights, I'd sit beside Shane and almost convince myself it hadn't happened. I'd feel the baby move, hear him whisper about how excited he was to be a dad, and a part of me, the foolish, hopeful part, wanted to believe him. Then I'd get a message from Rachel, and reality would slap me back awake. The tension between us grew louder. He'd come home later. I'd ask casual questions just to watch his body language. Did you see Rachel today? He'd pause for half a second, barely noticeable, before saying, no, why? That pause was enough. One night, I decided to test something. I texted Rachel pretending I'd found an old baby onesie from her college days. Want me to drop it off tomorrow? She replied almost immediately. Oh, don't worry about it. I'm actually going to be out of town for a few days. Funny, because Shane had just told me he was going on a work retreat for the weekend. I didn't confront him. Instead, I packed him a bag, kissed him goodbye, and watched him drive off. Then I called my cousin who worked at a car rental office downtown. I gave her his license plate. An hour later, she texted me a photo. Shane's car parked outside a lakeside Airbnb. Next to it, Rachel's silver hatchback. I stared at that photo for a long time. That was the night love finally died. The next morning, I drove down there. Not to confront them, just to see for myself. I parked a few houses away, hidden behind tall pines, and waited. Around noon, they came out. Shane carried a grocery bag. Rachel walked beside him, belly round and visible now. They looked happy. It was that moment it dawned on me. These wasn't just a fling that resulted in an accidental pregnancy. These people have made plans to start a family and leave me hanging. It left me devastated how they would plan to do such a thing. I mean, if Shane wasn't feeling me anymore, why not just man up and have a conversation before leaving? And Rachel, how could she do this? I wanted to hate her, but when she laughed, that same laugh I'd heard 100 times during girls' nights, I felt something else. Pity. Because she didn't know yet. I wasn't going to break them with anger. I was going to break them with exposure. On my drive home, it's a wonder how I made it back safe because my eyes were cloudy with tears. I consoled myself with what I had planned for them both. People think revenge is loud. That it comes with screaming, smashed dishes, or shouting matches in parking lots. But real revenge is quiet. It looks like a smile in a family photo when you already know who's going to fall next. Shane returned and went on with life like nothing happened. Living with him felt like coexisting with a ghost. Every movement, every breath he took reminded me of what I'd lost, and what he still didn't realize he was about to lose. I'd spent my whole career managing chaos at the airport, hundreds of flights, angry passengers, broken schedules, and I always found a way to make everything run smoothly. So when it came to planning his downfall, I treated it like an operation. Timelines, checklists, controlled execution. The first step was financial. The house was already in my name. I got it before we got married, and I'd paid for most of the mortgage while he drifted from one job to another. I quietly met with a lawyer to know my situation if I filed for a divorce. I wanted to ruin him, really. And as for Rachel, I had a hard time determining the best way to get my lick back at her, but seeing as she had little going on for her in life and how she largely depended on Shane, destroying him would also mean doing same to her. My baby shower was in a week's time, and of course, she was actively involved in planning the event. When the D-Day arrived, my living room glowed with soft gold balloons and pastel ribbons. I had invited just a few friends from work and family members. Everyone looked cheerful, no one suspecting that beneath my calm smile was a storm. Shane was there helping to set up chairs. At one point, I took Rachel aside and spoke to her. "You know, sometimes I feel like Shane's been distant," I said. She responded that maybe he was just stress. "Or maybe he's got someone else's attention," I added. Her face went pale. I could have sworn she swallowed hard that moment. Guilt sure has a way of coming to the surface, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. I smiled lightly. If he ever did cheat, I think the betrayal would hurt less if it was some stranger. But if it were someone close to me, I let the sentence hang. Rachel stammered, "Jada, don't talk like that." "Oh, relax," I said, patting her arm. "It's just a thought." But she couldn't relax. For the rest of the evening, her eyes kept darting to Shane. He avoided her gaze completely. Perhaps because I was around. Because when I stalked them, he wasn't shy around her. After everyone had eaten and laughed and taken pictures, people started to leave, until it was just the three of us left, cleaning up. Shane took out the trash, leaving just Rachel and I in the kitchen. Out of the blue, I said, "It's funny how the worst kind of betrayal is the one that's double-edged, you know? Having the two closest people to you put a knife through your back." I turned to her, and as she began to speak, I interjected, "Oh, pardon me. It's just this series I finished watching today. Help me with the dishes, please." As I turned towards the sink, I swear I could hear her heart racing. And then she cracked. "Jada, how long have you known?" "Known about what?" I asked. "You know what I'm talking about, Jada." I paused. The balls on this girl. Her face was the face of one caught in a lie, and there was no hiding the shame and guilt now. "Since the ultrasound at the hospital," she gasped. The realization that I had always known about her betrayal for weeks weighed heavily on her. "Why did you do it? And how long has this been going on?" I asked when the silence was getting too prolonged. I really wanted to know what drove them to want to hurt me like this. Shane especially. I was waiting for him to come back in. She swallowed hard, and then began to speak. "I was going through something last year, remember, when my mom died and I couldn't afford therapy? You were busy with work, and Shane kept checking in. He helped with errands, groceries, even fixed things in my apartment. One stupid night, I was drunk and sad, and he stayed over. It just happened." Her voice broke. "It was one time. I swear. I didn't even think I'd get pregnant." I looked at her. This woman had been my confidant, my chosen sister. And now she was a stranger holding a piece of my husband's life inside her. When Shane walked back in, the air changed instantly. He looked between us, saw Rachel's red eyes, my calm expression, and knew. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked straight at him, as if expecting him to answer a question he didn't hear but knew in his heart. He swallowed hard, guilt written across his face. "Jada, there's nothing I can say that'll make this right." "You're right," I said softly. "There isn't." Rachel sobbed quietly, whispering apologies that meant nothing. I turned to Shane. "Do you love her?" He hesitated, then whispered, "No." Rachel looked at him. "Well, it's happening. Do you love me?" Silence. That silence was my answer. I nodded slowly. "Get out. The both of you." He tried to speak, but I cut him off.
"Right now."
And for once, he obeyed. I filed for divorce 2 days later. My lawyer said I was safe regarding any request for spousal support even though I was the higher earner and he'd been dependent on my income. He cheated and got another woman pregnant. So I asked for the house, full custody of our unborn child, and I went ahead to seek financial responsibility for half of the baby's expenses. It's his child after all. Legally, in California, that was all fair game.
He moved out that week.
Rachel quit her job and left town. And for the first time in months, I slept without waking up in tears. 6 months later, after I gave birth, I opened my front door one afternoon to find Rachel standing there. She held a baby, tiny, bundled in pink.
"Hi."
I was in the neighborhood and decided to drop by.
"Her name's Lily," she said softly.
"She's yours too, in a way. I know this is a long shot, but I thought maybe our kids could know each other."
For a moment, I almost said yes.
Because forgiveness felt easier than holding on to pain. But then I looked at her and saw not the friend I once had, but the reminder of everything that shattered me. "I'm sorry, Rachel," I said quietly and shut my door. Till today, I wish I had said more to her, but I had no words at that moment. She nodded slowly, turned, and walked away. When the door closed, I finally let myself cry. Not for them, but for the woman I used to be. The one who thought loyalty was enough to keep people honest. And that's how betrayal remade me. They say time heals everything. But sometimes time doesn't heal. It just teaches you how to live with the scar. It's been a year since everything fell apart. The divorce was finalized, my baby was born, and life moved on. At least, that's what people assume when they see me now. Walking through the airport with my son in my arms, badge clipped to my uniform, a soft but guarded smile. They don't see the nights I still wake up, half expecting to feel Shane's arm across my waist. Or the moments when I see a woman laughing with her best friend and feel a pang of nostalgia I can't quite explain. People often ask me, if you could go back, would you do anything differently? And the truth? I don't know. Because pain is a strange teacher. Without it, I wouldn't have learned my worth. Without betrayal, I wouldn't have discovered my strength. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I replay everything: the hospital, the ultrasound, the overheard whispers, and I realize something heartbreaking. If I had been more present in Rachel's pain, maybe she wouldn't have turned to him. Maybe my friend's loneliness wouldn't have found comfort in my husband's arms. That thought still stings. Because it means I wasn't just a victim. I was part of the silence that made their betrayal possible. And that's the kind of truth you don't get closure from. You just learn to live with it. But I'm still here, standing and thriving. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a woman who is broken by betrayal. I see a woman who faced the fire and walked out stronger. So if anyone out there's listening, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, remember this. You don't owe anyone forgiveness that costs your peace. You don't have to play the saint when someone's torn your world apart. Healing doesn't always look gentle. Sometimes, it looks like reclaiming your story one boundary at a time. I didn't just lose a husband and a best friend. I lost the version of myself that thought loyalty meant blindness. Now I see clearly. And that's worth everything I lost. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. If it hit home, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself after betrayal, hit that like button and subscribe to Darnell Stories. There's always more where this came from, stories that remind you. Pain can break you, or it can build you. The choice is yours.